If you've clicked on this video, you're probably here for one thing: my updated GT DD Pro settings for Gran Turismo 7 after update 1.71. So, I'm not going to waste your time. Now, there's no denying that the new physics have divided the GT7 community. Some people love them, others absolutely hate them. But I think there's one thing that all Fanatec users can agree on. Force feedback now provides noticeably more detail, and we can feel far more of what the car is doing beneath us. So, over the last few days, I've been testing and fine-tuning my settings to make the most of that additional feedback without making the wheel feel overly heavy, artificial, or distracting. And I haven't just tested these settings for a couple of laps. While developing them, I've managed to set the 12th fastest lap time in the world in Daily Race C. I've also completed all 100 of the normal and master license tests with gold, giving me the opportunity to test the new physics across everything from high downforce racing cars to difficult road cars. So these settings have been tested across a genuinely wide variety of cars and driving conditions. Now, one of the biggest additions for GT DD Pro users is FullForce support. And currently, I have FullForce set to 50, which I found to be a great middle ground. It gives me more information through the wheel without making every vibration and surface detail so strong that it becomes distracting. Another thing I've noticed with the new physics is that the game rewards more decisive steering inputs. Turning the wheel more aggressively can help the car rotate through certain corners. If you feel like you're having to move your hands too far or the steering wheel feels too slow, you could experiment with reducing the wheel's maximum rotation to make your inputs more responsive. But just remember that the lower rotation means faster steering, so adjust it gradually. Wheel settings will always involve some personal preference, but these should give GT DD Pro users an excellent starting point for update 1.71. Now, let's jump into the Fanatec settings first, and I'll explain exactly what I've changed and why. So let's start with the settings I've actually changed, and more importantly, why I've changed them. Now, sensitivity remains on auto, allowing Gran Turismo 7 to adjust the steering rotation appropriately for each car. Force feedback strength also remains at 100%, while I control the overall strength using the in-game maximum torque settings. The first major addition is FullForce. This previously wasn't available on the GT DD Pro, but following the latest firmware and game updates, we can now take advantage of it. FullForce adds another layer of high-frequency information through the wheel, helping you feel the finer details such as engine, road surface, and what the tyres are doing. Now, I've set this to 50%. At 100%, I found that some of those vibrations could be distracting and potentially mask the information I actually need while driving. At 50%, I still receive that information, but it complements normal force feedback instead of overpowering it. You can increase or decrease this depending on how immersive and active you want the wheel to feel. Now, I've increased natural dampener slightly from 20 to 25. This gives the steering a little bit more stability and prevents it from feeling overly nervous, particularly through the fast corners and during sudden changes of direction. It's only a small increase because too much dampening can make the steering feel slow and mute some of the detail. The biggest change is natural friction, which I've significantly reduced from 45 to 15. Natural friction adds constant mechanical resistance to the wheel. It isn't dynamic information being generated by the car or the track. At 45, to me, the wheel felt weighty, but some of that finer force feedback information was being hidden underneath that resistance. Reducing it to 15 has made the steering much more responsive, and I can change direction more quickly, catch slides more naturally, and feel more of the useful information coming directly from the game. There is still enough friction to stop the wheel feeling completely loose or unrealistic, but it no longer fights against my inputs. I've also turned the natural inertia down from 5 to off. Natural inertia adds simulated weight to the steering axis. It can be useful with a very light steering wheel, but with my ClubSport RS wheel, I don't feel the need for that. Turning it off makes the wheel respond more immediately when I initiate a turn or make a correction. Now, the interpolation filter has been moved from off to 3. With interpolation switched off, you can receive the rawest possible information, but it can occasionally feel slightly rough or grainy. A setting of 3 applies a small amount of smoothing. It cleans up that roughness without filtering out the detail or making the steering feel disconnected. Force effect intensity remains at 100%, meaning effects remain as sharp and direct as possible. Force also remains at 100%, so I'm not reducing the strength of the information being sent from the game. Now, there's a caveat here to spring rate. I'm not sure whether this is fully in the game, but I have this to 100%. And what it's supposed to do, this is how it's supposed to work. It doesn't simply add a permanent spring effect. It allows Gran Turismo 7 to use that to channel at full strength whenever the game calls for it. If the game doesn't send a spring effect, this won't manufacture one by itself. So I have it at 100% just in case it is in the game and it is working, because I've heard that it doesn't really do anything. And same for the dampener effect. This is at 100%. It remains at 100%, so allowing any dampener effects generated by the game to come through as intended. Again, I'm not entirely sure. I've heard that that's not really working or crossing over with Gran Turismo 7. But either way, they're both at 100%. Overall, I'm not trying to make the wheel feel as heavy as possible. I'm trying to make it informative. These settings remove much of the artificial resistance, retain enough stability, and allow the extra detail introduced through FullForce to come through clearly. The result is a wheel that feels more responsive during initial turn, clearer when the tyres begin to lose grip, and easier to correct when the car starts to slide. Now let's move to Gran Turismo itself before we get into the wheel settings, because I've changed both of the in-game force feedback settings. Previously, I had both set to 8, but I've now reduced both to 5. Now, for maximum torque determines the overall strength of force feedback coming from the game. Reducing this from 8 to 5 makes the wheel slightly lighter and allows me to rotate it more quickly and aggressively, which I found particularly useful with the new physics. It gives the wheel more headroom to reproduce different levels of force. If the setting is too high, stronger effects can begin to reach the wheelbase's maximum output and clip. When that happens, several different forces can all feel equally heavy, meaning that you potentially lose some of that detail that tells you what the front tyres are actually doing. At 5, the wheel is still more than strong enough on the 8 Nm GT DD Pro, but it feels more responsive and I can distinguish the smaller changes in grip more clearly. Now, I've also reduced the force feedback strength on sensitivity. This setting controls how readily the wheel responds to smaller force feedback signals coming from the game. At 8, the steering felt very active and heavy around the center, and some of the smaller effects were being exaggerated. A setting of 5 still gives me a clear response when the tires load up or begin to lose grip, but it feels more progressive and less nervous on the straights. Combined with a lower natural friction, it gives me a wheel that is informative without constantly fighting against me. One important distinction is that force feedback sensitivity does not alter the wheel's rotation. If you want the steering itself to respond more quickly to your hands, then this is controlled by the Sen, aka sensitivity setting, on the wheelbase. And I currently have the sensitivity on auto. Gran Turismo can match the rotation to the car I'm driving. However, because the new physics appear to reward more decisive steering inputs, you could experiment with a lower manual rotation. That would allow you to achieve the same steering angle with less physical movement, although it may feel less realistic and can make the car more sensitive. Now, what I would recommend with that is in race cars that can help, but road cars, the extra yanking of the steering doesn't appear to help. So be very careful with that if you're driving road cars more often. Now, you may notice that my controller steering sensitivity is set to 5. As far as I'm aware, this applies to steering with controller's analog stick or directional buttons, rather than a connected steering wheel. So it shouldn't affect these wheel settings, but I have heard that 5 is the sweet spot in which you want it in. There's a bit of a conspiracy theory of whether that affects the wheel or not. I'm not sure, so I'm not really going to comment. To summarize, my in-game force feedback maximum torque is set to 5, force feedback sensitivity is set to 5, and my Fanatec wheelbase strength remains at 100%. That combination keeps the full capability of the wheelbase available while allowing the game to send a cleaner, more progressive signal with less risk of losing detail through excessive force. So there we have it. Those are my updated wheel settings and in-game settings for Gran Turismo 7 after update 1.71. Do me a favor, if you've made it this far in the video, hit the like button, make sure you subscribe for future content, and if you try these wheel settings out and they helped you, come back to the comment section and let me know. Or if you found that you've got some better settings, by all means, come to the comment section and let me know what you've done differently, and I might try them out myself. But either way, that's it for today's video. So from the fastest snake in the world, it's over and out. Take care, and thanks for watching.